wealth of its top aides to the Russian scandal hovering over the administration. There's a lot to talk about. Let's bring in the panel here. Eugene Scott, CNN politics reporter, Amber Phillips, a political reporter for the Washington Post, and Per Sunard, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Paris, let me start with you. And Dan Merrick set the table just before the break about the financial disclosures. And we know that Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner brought in $195 million. Their collective worth of maybe above $700 million. She is still going to keep that stake in the Trump Hotel in D.C. How is that anything but a conflict of interest, working in the White House and still benefiting from that company, and potentially foreign dignitaries maybe going there to try to curry favor with the administration?
You know, I think the interesting thing about this entire disclosure that they're required to do of over 100 some odd White House staffers is the fact that at the end of the day, he's attracting people who are very successful in the private sector and bringing them into the White House to work. And I think it's something we should celebrate. And I think it's something that to a lot of Americans, including myself, it's very aspirational, inspirational to see these type of people who are very successful in their private sector coming to government to try to help. Now, as it relates to Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner, they're very successful people and they're quite financially well off. She does not have any type of wrongdoing here, because you have to look at the White House counsel going in and determining that she needed to come in at a formal capacity at the White House, so she's doing that. And so I believe that everything that needs to be done to make sure that she's above board as it relates to her finances and as it relates to her work at the White House is going to be done with the help of the White House counsel and her own personal attorneys.
But Eugene, there are these watchdog groups who say that because she still has this stake, and there were some reorganizations that happened with the president and the Trump Hotel, so that he would not continue to collect monies from that hotel while he's in office, but Ivanka Trump will. There are questions of conflict of interest.
There's no conflict of interest.
That was for Eugene.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Eugene.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there are people we've seen, ethics czars who previously worked in the White House administration, say that this is not only nepotism, that the Kushners were hired, but that they were hired in a way that presents conflicts of interest. And there's concerns about whether or not they will actually be able to remain in a way that suggests that they were above reproach and show integrity. One has also argued along from the ethics community that one of the reasons that the Kushners were so profitable last year is because they had such a high profile on the campaign, drawing more attention to their businesses. But the Trump administration and Ivanka specifically have said that they have gone above the call of duty to try to separate themselves from their business interests in a way that would harm or just disadvantage the American people.
Amber, let's turn to the Russia investigation. The ranking Democrat on House Intelligence, Adam Schiff, was at the White House, viewed some documents and released a statement afterwards saying this, and I'm just going to read a portion of it. It was represented to me that these are precisely the same materials that were provided to the chairman over a week ago. While I cannot discuss the content of the documents, if the White House had any concern over these materials, they should have been shared with the full committee in the first place as part of our ordinary oversight responsibilities. Let's take that first sentence first. Chairman Nunes has not disclosed what he's seen, so there's no way to know exactly if they're looking at the same thing, is there?
No, we don't know what Chairman Nunes saw. We don't quite know who gave it to him. We don't even know what's in it. All we know is to take him at his word that it proves that the president and his allies' communications may have been intercepted kind of accidentally. And Nunes added that this doesn't deal with Russia. We're still trying to, like, I compare this to like looking at a painting at an art gallery, but there's a veneer over it and you can't really make out what the painting is or what the colors are. It's all just so confusing as to why we are still talking about this wiretapping and what this means for the president's allegations. President Obama wiretapped him during the campaign. We just don't know at this point.
Come to you with that second sentence from the Schiff statement where he says if there was concern here, the White House should have gone through a regular order. Why the initial, if they are the same documents, the initial briefing for Nunes and then this belated briefing for the ranking Democrat, if these are the same documents and they had some concern here?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that we don't know. We don't know if they are the same documents. We don't know exactly what the Chairman Nunes had originally seen, but I think that what we have to be careful in our analysis and of what's going on is not to assume the negative, not to assume that there's a cover-up, not to assume that there's something nefarious going on. What we should assume is that the federal government, our federal government, is working to get to the bottom of these issues, that the White House is cooperating, and that the people on the Hill, the Chairman Nunes especially, are doing what they're supposed to do to get to the bottom of these issues. And I think that's where we should be focused our attention on, is the fact that an investigation is going to happen. He's seen some information that he did not like, or that he felt that somehow might have corroborated what the president had tweeted out about general surveillance by the Obama administration to the Trump campaign or the Trump transition.
Yeah, the question, though, which it has been for quite a while now, is the source of that information. If the chairman of the committee went to the White House or the White House grounds to get the details of these documents, and then went to the press and then went back to the White House the next day, why couldn't these employees go just to the Oval Office? I want to play for you what we heard from Sean Spicer yesterday about, this was in response to a question about if what happened in the exchange of information was appropriate. Here's what he said.
To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunes has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared, and nothing that is inappropriate, exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
So if it's 100% proper, Eugene, what's the White House's justification for not answering the basic who, what, when, where? I get that they're not answering the how, the what or maybe the how, but some of the basic questions of how this information was disseminated.
Well, it was really interesting just seeing the press secretary say that it was appropriate, because he must know everything regarding what transpired. It's hard to determine whether or not it was actually appropriate, because details are still coming out. To Paris's point, we still are trying to figure out information, and we have to be slow to make assumptions about what happened exactly. And so I'm not quite sure how one can determine whether or not the actions were appropriate or not. I think what the White House's intent is to remain to be consistent and communicate that they have operated in an honorable way that they believe was above reproach and showed integrity and was not compromising the investigation, because the criticism has been that the White House actually wants to end the investigation, and whether or not it will actually happen and carry out is what everyone is paying attention to.
Amber, I want you to see this video. This was yesterday. The president, the vice president, and two members of his cabinet there in the Oval Office. He was making some remarks about these two executive orders regarding trade he was going to make, and then this happened.
Thank you, everybody. You're going to see some very, very strong results very, very quickly. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, today with your tweet, were you trying to tell the Justice Department to grant immunity to Michael Flynn? Were you trying to do that, Mr. President? Was that your intention, Mr. President, sir?
Thank you, President.
Mr. President, was that your intention, Mr. President? Was that your intention, sir?
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Amber, you see there the president leaving the Oval Office without signing the executive orders. The vice president taps him on the back and says, sir, you have to sign them. He says, we'll do it in another room. They have to gather these documents and then run off. I mean, the questions about Russia are chasing this president into another room out of the Oval Office there.
Literally. Listen, if you step back and look at everything Russia since he's been inaugurated in January, every major development has been news that the Trump administration doesn't want. He didn't want Congress to even investigate Russia meddling in the U.S. election. He didn't think at first Russia did it. Now you hear that the advisors of his inner circle, like Jared Kushner, are being asked to go to Capitol Hill to testify. You hear that the FBI is investigating collusion, potential collusion, between Russia and Trump associates during the campaign. You hear his former national security advisor wants immunity to be able to talk to Congress. Immunity for what? We don't know. But the bottom line is this Russia story is something that the Trump administration cannot get out from under, cannot escape. And I think it's because all this news has been the opposite of what they want, which is for this to just go away.
We'll be talking about how the White House can get out from under this Russia story a little later in the show. Amber Phillips, Paris Denard, Eugene Scott, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We certainly will. Next, former Obama presidential advisor David Axelrod giving his advice for President Trump, how he says the administration has to operate in the middle of so many swirling controversies.
What's needed is discipline and focus. The investigation is a separate issue.
Charges filed after a massive fire. Look at this, down a part of an Atlanta interstate, and now investigators are getting their first clues on what likely caused this.